You said, okay, it's oftentimes one-on-one communication, right? So, call me if you find something interesting, for example. How does this work with the, number of employees you actually have? Are there, I don't know, any good ways based on your experience how to drive collaboration or at least drive transparency for these very early pieces of nuggets of gold, something even in the innovation process?
I mean, that's really my personal experience. I've not just had within Kerber, also with my previous jobs. It's really not too formal, not too process driven, because it is, as you said, right? You think about, with that amount of employees, you need a formal process because how to handle all of this, right? But it's not that you have like these 1,000 calls every day, right?
No.
Of course, you could select a very proactive approach saying, okay, this is our challenge, send in all your ideas and you might get a lot. But if you just have it on here we are, if you have an idea, you can call. And there are even board members in the Kerber group that offer this, just call.
And it can make things slow, actually, right? Because if you need to wait, if you need to wait until some decision board comes together, maybe once a quarter and discuss something that needs to be, approved prior to passing any gate whatsoever. So that can actually slow things down quite a bit, right? Yeah.
Totally. And I think it's really to find the right balance because, of course, in a corporate, you should follow certain structure, but you need to allow for this kind of freedom. And sometimes also I feel like, working in a corporate, it must be super formal and process driven, but why? Who has defined that it has to be that way, right? At least
just
not
humans have defined
for the
it. That's the thing,
right?
Exactly. Just humans have defined it. So why not redefining it? Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what is your perspective on talent? I mean, logistics is at the core at the heart of the economy, right? It's the engine and the connection that brings stuff from A to B, that makes a lot of things actually happen in a globalized world. And a lot of cool stuff is happening. You shared some interesting insights, technologies, trends, and projects or innovations that are to come up soon. I had also a great discussion with DB Schenker on what they're doing. So there is actually quite a few things happening. But for a long time it was just insanely attractive for especially tech talent to join the large tech companies, right? So how is talent acquisition going at your end? Do you have a good in-stream on new talent? Is it challenging? Are they even interested in logistics these days? What is your perspective?
Yeah, unfortunately, the industry was not very sexy in the past, right? I think recent developments are kind of helping that there is awareness for this industry. I mean, how would you know if when I finished school, I did not know anything about logistics, basically, because we have not been in touch with it, right? On a private basis, right? So there is another awareness for the industry as such. And I think this is what leaders have to do, promote the industry and show that it is sexy. And there's a lot of cool new technology. So I think also for tech talent, there are a lot of jobs, right? Especially if we look at everything around data analytics, data science, right? There is so much we can optimize. Yeah. So I think this is developing in the right direction. But as I said, leaders have to show the path a little bit, encourage, also support young talent, do podcasts like this one, right? Create awareness. And I think the industry is really changing. I mean, I'm now with the industries, a couple of years. So if I add academia to it, it's really long years. I don't count it now, but basically 15 years with academia, and a lot has changed, right? When I started and visited the first logistics conferences, when I still was a student, it was so conservative, antiquated. It still sometimes is, but it's a lot has changed. And this we can see there's a new young generation. I mean, we have now this cool podcast, right? I mean, 5 years back, no way.
True.
So I think it's becoming a real attractive industry.
That's great to hear. And now, if let's imagine there is kind of, an ambitious and driven student about to enter the real world, right? So coming from academia, now there is, as said, a lot of ambition, a lot of energy. What advice would you give to him or her? And what advice should he or she ignore?
Yeah. Let's start with my advice. You said getting close to the industry. I would even go one step further, get close to operations, right? Especially if you finish like kind of general management studies, you often end up in a very super interesting strategy job also, right? So did I. But then, at least from the business perspective, you're sometimes kind of disconnected, right? There is still another real world in the industry, right? Who is doing sales, who is earning the money. The strategy is not earning the money percent at least. And so also to make a step aside and really learn the business, right? So I've chosen the difficult way, I would say, but I make it, and I can definitely advise to be very, very close to operations to really understand and then decide which way to go. And second part of your question, which advice to ignore?
Yeah.
I think there is no advice to ignore because, I mean, everybody who is giving you advice has an idea behind it, yeah? So you should at least think about what he or she meant with it. And then you can say, okay, not relevant to me, but at least make up your mind around it, right? But there's not the one and only there where I would say, that was a shitty advice, right? So every advice brought me one step further at the end, even though I disagreed to some of them, of course, but they made me think and say, okay, if I disagree, how would I do it differently?
That's fair. Okay, and a very interesting perspective. And with that, we are already near the end of this episode. So Kerstin, let's try to summarize with everything we had, trends, sustainability, innovation in logistics, and so on. What would be the 3 key takeaways that you would want listeners to take away from this episode from you?
Yeah, first, logistics is sexy. It's a cool industry to work for. So is innovation. That's the second one. It's also very sexy. You just need to find the way to realize it. Don't give up. It takes some time and patience sometimes. And collaboration, also across company borders. So we had this ecosystem talk. It will be key in the future, especially in innovation. Yeah.